Are you comfortable in your own mind?
I would say I am now, but it was a really long journey to get there.
Really? Why?
Well, I grew up with a lot of insecurities and I never really liked who I was. And it took a lot of work to understand myself and understand my thoughts and be able to work with them and eventually change them.
So, what I'm hearing is that it's all in your mind. You are about to be a part of Life Happens.
The lifestyle podcast with an unusual combination of new perspective and seasoned experience.
With Michelle R. Williams
And Nick Hurst.
Come and join our conversation on all aspects of life.
Because life happens.
But you can too.
Yes, I think it is all in your mind. The way you see yourself, the way you think others see you, how you fit into society, everything. It's all in your mind. And that's why it's so crucial to be self-aware and really comfortable with who you are.
I guess it all comes down to mental health. And before we get into that, I just should acknowledge, or we should acknowledge, the fact that nowadays mental health has become so much more important. Medical science and society, for one, seem to have got onto the same page and agreed that mental health is a thing, because it used to not really be a thing. It used to be something that was kind of brushed under the carpet. But now it's very much acknowledged, and it's acknowledged in the workplace, it's acknowledged in schools, as much as having a physical disease like pneumonia or COVID or something is. We now take care of mental health much more, and we nurture it. Whereas back in the day, let's say, certainly I can remember when I was at school, if you felt bad in your mind, you were just told, pull yourself together, or other similar expressions. There was absolutely no tolerance of any kind of potential mental health problems. And I think you probably found the same, did you?
Unfortunately, which is really sad if you think about it, because, if you say, mental health care was really bad in 1970s or whatever, it's like, yeah, okay, kind of makes sense. But I'm 21 and I literally grew up with the same. Pull yourself together. You are just being dramatic. You are fine. You don't have mental issues. I grew up with that. And I mean, obviously, it also depends on a country. And I think, unfortunately, Czech Republic is really behind, even nowadays, unfortunately. But it's still sad to think about it that even my generation grew up with that.
True. It's taken a long time, I think, for the acknowledgement of looking after people's mental health is as important as looking after any other part of your health. We've learned to eat better, that we've learned a lot about nutrition and how that can keep us healthy. But we're also still in the process, really, of learning and acknowledging the way that we have to, if you like, nourish our minds. And the first person, the primary carer, I've just come up with that, borrowed that expression, the primary carer of mental health is you. I mean, I don't mean Michelle R. Williams has got to look after the mental health of the entire world.
I mean, I will study to become a therapist, so technically you're right.
Technically, although I think you have your work cut out if you're going to take on the whole world. No, what I mean by you is each individual, that's where it starts. So what can we do to try and help ourselves? Because it is all in your mind. Again, this is a quote from a song that I used last week. All my problems may be meaningless, but that doesn't make them go away.
So, how you are saying that, it all starts with ourselves, that we all have to sort of help ourselves with that. That is so easy to say. But at the same time, unfortunately, many people don't know how to. And they do need that outside help because, therapy is not about someone else helping you. So many people think that they will go, in a therapy session and someone will fix all of their problems. That's not how it works. You go to therapy when you need someone else to give you the tool to do the inner work, but you still need to do the inner work yourself. And, some people need other people for it, therapists. Some people can do it themselves, which is something I do, for example. But the thing is, and it's sort of connected to, the development of mental health, is that sometimes it can be really hard to get that help from someone else. And there was this very interesting fact that I came across because I'm planning to go study psychology in Ireland, and I was talking with my agent because I'm doing all of this through a Czech agency, and we were talking. She was telling me that a lot of people in Czech Republic want to go when they are going to study abroad. They want to study psychology. And she told me that it's because it's not really easy to study psychology in Czech Republic. And, it's not because our education system would be bad, or it's not because, I don't know, we don't have enough people interested in that or whatever, but it's because there is no one to teach it. Because the generation above my generation wasn't really growing up surrounded by that, and they weren't really interested in that. But now my generation is overly interested in it. So we have so many people who want to study it, but we don't have enough people to teach it. And that's why you have only when I was doing the research, you only have 3 universities in Czech Republic that really teach you to become a therapist. That definitely can't, 3 schools or whatever the number is, can't take all the people interested in it. And that's why it's probably one of the most wanted majors in Czech students when they go study abroad, which I think is so interesting.
It is. I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either before my agent told me. So, but it makes sense. And as I already said, I think that Czech Republic is not the worst country definitely in that field, but we are a lot behind. And also the thing is that everyone is like, yeah, but your generation now wants to study it, so in the future we'll be fine. We won't, because people who will study it probably won't end up working in Czech Republic because of the salary. Because and I'm not even talking about teachers here. I'm talking about therapists, psychologists. The salary is just so terrible that no one will do it for that money. So people who are actually good at it, and people who actually, when they speak English or they speak other languages, they move away, which is definitely not fixing that problem. But selfishly, I have to say that I will do the same because, selfishly, you do want to get a good salary for your abilities. So that makes sense.
True. Let me just go back a bit. You were talking about how it's now in the Czech Republic, your generation are much more conscious of mental health issues, and therefore it's generated a much increased interest in psychology and in people wanting to go into psychology and work as therapists. But what about generations before? Is our mental health problems something new, or they've always been there, surely?
Yeah, of course. It's definitely not something new. And I feel like a lot of older generations think that. They're like, oh, yeah, it's this trendy thing. Like, suddenly all of you have mental issues, blah, blah, blah. But it's all connected because my generation is interested in it. So we are sort of studying it and talking about it more and everything. And we are slowly figuring out that basically everyone has something. There are just so many issues that when you think about it, everyone has something and everyone is dealing with something on certain levels, obviously. But because of that, because we are more educated in it, we talk about it more. And because we talk about it more, it's not such a taboo. And therefore, it may seem like we struggle with it more, but everyone's struggling with it. Every single generation struggled with mental health, but they weren't talking about it. So it wasn't that upfront. It wasn't on the first page. So people didn't really notice it because people were embarrassed to talk about it. And it's all connected to everything.
That's very general. It's all connected to everything. Could
No,
you explain what do you
I
mean
mean,
by that?
I mean it's all connected to everything. But when people are not interested in it, they don't go study it. And when they go study it, then they can't teach it. And when they can't teach it, people are not aware of it. And when people are not aware of it, they think it's taboo. And it's all connected to the education thing and to the
Mm.
awareness thing.
The key word there that stands out to me that you mentioned twice is taboo. I think that is the big problem. And certainly,
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry now. I thought that I pronounced it wrong 2 times. The way you said that, I was so ready for you to tell me that I pronounced it wrong.
no, I thought your pronunciation was great, and I certainly understood it. But
Good.
when I think back to, for instance, my childhood, the generation above me, certainly, my parents' generation, and then beyond that, my grandparents' generation, definitely anything to do with mental health, any slight considerations that there may be something wrong with your mental health would be completely taboo, and definitely you would not mention it. You would try to hide anything that you were feeling. And I mentioned earlier this expression, if you were feeling down or you weren't feeling right mentally, the response you would likely get from anybody was pull yourself together. We have another idiom in English. You know how I like my idioms. And
Mhm.
that is very much tied into the image of a sort of typical Englishman. And that is a stiff upper lip. Have you heard that expression?
From you, yes.
From me. Okay, so
Before that, no, but before that I didn't know a single English expression, and now I know every single one of them after talking to you.
oh, I'm not sure every single one, but we'll get there. We will
But
get
we are getting there.
yeah, absolutely. But now, a stiff upper lip, if you haven't heard that expression, what it means is you do not show your emotions. So that is very much something that English people it used to be the thing with English people. Keep a stiff upper lip. And going through 2 world wars, it was very much, incumbent on soldiers that you keep a stiff upper lip. You don't show what you feel. And of course, people who were in the First World War and the Second World War went through terrible things and clearly came back. Those who survived came back heavily traumatized, and there was absolutely no real acknowledgement or help for people, as I think there's a similar situation occurred in the United States after the Vietnam War, that people were coming back and were completely sort of swept under the carpet, ignored by society because of the trauma that they'd suffered. So going back to this English thing, the stiff upper lip, English people were brought up to deliberately not show emotions. And it was a show of weakness. It was considered weak to show emotions. That's kind of changed a lot over the last 20 odd years, maybe a bit more. And I think one of the big changing points was when Princess Diana was killed in the car crash in Paris. And she was obviously a hugely popular and famous figure in the UK and, of course, around the world. I mean, arguably, she was probably at that time the most famous woman in the world. So the shock level was tremendous. I cannot tell you how shocked English society was. You woke up on the Sunday morning because it happened on Saturday night, the car crash, and the whole country was different. I was aware of it straight away. Once I turned on the radio and then the TV, everything was different. All the normal programs had gone. There was no pop music being played on the radio. It was all very solemn music. And the whole country was traumatized, basically. And this time showed their emotion. And there was this huge outpouring of grief. And all around Buckingham Palace in London, the royal residence, the Queen's residence, as was then, there was this sea of flowers, people coming there to leave flowers in memory of Princess Diana. And constantly on the news, you would get pictures of people coming and bringing their flowers, in streams of tears. And the thing was, at the time, the Queen, then Queen Elizabeth II, being very much old school. I mean, she was a brilliant queen and she did an awful lot of good things, but she didn't get it because in her mind, it was all about you keep a stiff upper lip in these circumstances. You don't show emotions. And the fact that the whole country was showing such emotion completely through her. And for a while it was a big problem. But I think that was a sea change. That marked a sea change in certainly in people in the UK were starting to connect more with their emotions and feel that they could show them. And I think that was, I have to say, at the time, that did get quite a lot of criticism, from pundits on TV. But I think actually it was a good thing. And I think that, we've started to be more demonstrative as a culture, as a race of people, that we can now show our emotions. And by doing that, I think it's probably a healthier thing rather than try to keep everything bottled up. But you were, when we were talking about this before, you were making the point that, some people, or a lot of people maybe, are just not comfortable in their own minds, in who they are. What did you mean by that?
I mean, obviously, that's just, me sort of looking around and listening to people, so I don't want to generalize here. But I did notice it with a lot of people that they are just not comfortable showing who they are. And maybe, and that's connected with what you just said, with English people not showing their emotions. And one thing is being very discreet with showing it out loud, if I say it that way. But the other thing is showing it to yourself. And I feel like the line between it is very thin, because if you are growing up sort of being used to not show emotions out loud, you then are not in touch with these emotions, and you can't even bear them to yourself because you don't know how to do that. While, in my opinion, being comfortable with yourself and being in touch with yourself, with your emotions, with your thoughts is one of the most important skills to have. Because if you think about it, and I mean, it's quite scary thinking about it this way, but if you think about it, you will always have just you. In certain life situations, in certain life periods, you will be on your own. I don't think you can go through life without a single period of being totally on your own. And you are the one who will always have to fix all of your problems. Because obviously, you can talk to people, you can talk to a therapist, some people can help you fix certain problems in your life, but at the end of the day, you are always the one who will have to fix it. And you are the one who will change or fix or ruin your life. You are the one who will always make the life changing decisions. So being in touch with you, basically, who you are, what you want, what maybe, triggers you, what doesn't make you comfortable, or what makes you happy, and these things is just so important. And from what I'm seeing, so many people do not realize that, and so many people do not have that skill. And it's actually quite funny because if you think about how people build relationships, friendships, relationship, romantic, platonic, we put so much effort into building relationships, which obviously we should. Like, people are social creatures. We should be doing that. But at the same time, you should put the same effort to build that relationship with yourself, because it's just as important, in my opinion, maybe even more.
That's a good point. You've got to learn to love yourself. And I say learn because it's not necessarily something that comes automatically to everybody. But a couple of points also occurred to me that, yeah, you've got to do this essentially on your own because it's your mind. Nobody can go in there and start digging around physically. They can guide you, as you
Clean a
say.
little, dust it. Oh, I would need someone to do that. Just dust my brain a little. That would be so nice.
Yeah, actually, I think you're right. Your brain definitely does need dusting, cleaning up, but that's another story.
Yeah, yours needs fixing, mind you,
Very true.
in certain areas.
And we kind of help each other in that. And this brings me to the point I was trying to make before I started insulting you and you insulting me back. That ideally we should all try to develop our own support network with close friends, maybe family, but not necessarily. Your family might not actually be the best people to be your
Yeah,
support network.
no. My family is the reason why my brain needs fixing. So no, thank you.
I think it's the same for lots of people. And actually,
Hmm.
I think our next episode, we're going to be talking about Christmas, and
Yeah, we will have a holiday episode.
that may well come into it. Because let's face it, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. So your family
That's a
is
very deep
thrust
topic.
upon you. So yeah, that is an
I'm sure we will
interesting
get into
topic.
that, not just in the Christmas episode, but also in some future episode, because
Definitely.
that's my go-to topic.
Yeah.
Like, you can't choose your family, you can choose your friends. You don't own your family. That's my go-to topic, and we will definitely get into that.
I mean, for some people also, it should be said that it can be hard to find friends and just be
Yeah.
to be social and be outgoing enough to have
Yeah.
friends, especially if you're going through a really bad period.
I'm not really a social person, and it takes me a lot of time and a lot of energy to actually build that trust, because it's also about trust. It's not having a small talk with someone. I think that so many people have, if I think about myself, I have so many friends, but there's a very limited number of people that I trust enough to share these things with them. I think that now it's like two people, including you. So not much.
But that's fine, because at least it's not zero people.
But even
But
in case it is zero people, it can happen. You can't really, just because you want that friendship doesn't mean that it will last, because it takes two people to keep a relationship. So that was sort of what I was saying before, that, there is the possibility that even if you have these people, you will lose them. So that's why it's important to have this relationship and this support system with yourself, because you won't lose that. You won't lose yourself in that way, to lose that support system you have within you.
I want to come back to that because that's a really good point, and there's some other points that we could make about that. But first, I just want to go into anecdote mode, because you kept talking about how you used the word fix ourselves a few times, just a short time ago, and it just put me in mind of a I think probably now pretty famous song by the band Coldplay,
Of course.
Fix You. You know the song, and it's about that. It's about being a friend and helping somebody who at a time when they most need it. But my anecdote is that I went to see Coldplay live in Barcelona some years ago, and they were performing Fix You. And I've been to a lot of gigs over the years, and the whole audience started singing the song, and I have never experienced such an extraordinary connection and such extraordinary love from the audience towards the band, and from the band back to the audience. You could almost cut it with a knife, the atmosphere. It was absolutely magical. They had really sort of captured something. They had got, I suppose there must have been about 15,000 people in this arena, and they had got everybody by the heart, if you like. It was truly, truly a magical experience. And that's why, when huge groups of human beings come together collectively with one purpose, like to go to see a concert or to go to see a sporting event, you get that kind of shared emotion, which is just beyond anything that you can, you can't make it up. And that's something very special that human beings have, that we can have this shared experience that triggers emotions it can be in a very positive way, as it was at that Coldplay gig, or for instance, if you support a football team and they're doing really badly, you go and watch them, it can be a really negative way. But at the same time, you can, and I speak as a West Ham United supporter, as a team from London in England, who lose a lot of games. So I'm used to this. But it's a shared experience. So the fact that you get really down about, oh, my football team's losing, but you're there with another, 25,000 people who are also feeling exactly the same thing as you. So in a way, your grief is shared. So being able to share any kind of emotion with at least one person is always such a help. Doing it on your own That's where it gets harder. And the way I think, and I hope you would agree with this, that the way that we do it is that you have to have that kind of inner confidence, which is probably something that you and I have both developed ourselves individually.
Yeah, I think that we both are really comfortable with ourselves and, in touch with all those inner things. But for me, and as I already mentioned in the intro, it wasn't always like that. And when I meet new people, a thing that I get a lot is that I look so confident. I got so many times in my life that I'm one of the most confident people that particular person ever met, which for me is so funny because I am definitely not. Even though nowadays and past few years it's better, but for me it's only like what 4 or 5 years thing. And before that, I was fighting with my confidence a lot growing up, probably more than, normal teenagers. And I don't really know why it was, but I always thought that it was a physical thing because I really didn't like the way I looked because, I didn't really knew my style. I was really, really skinny, like overly skinny, and I was being made fun of that a lot. And, I was wearing glasses and I just really didn't like the way I look. It wasn't the typical good looking young girl that everyone was expecting. And also, one of my best friends in elementary school, you know her, she was the most perfect girl ever growing up. She was the beautiful one, the smart one, and everything. I loved her. She was amazing. But being her friend was even harder in that way that I was always comparing myself to her and I always wanted to be like her. And I remember I went through this time in my life when I literally wasn't able to look at myself in the mirror. Every morning I just looked at myself and I just felt sick. I spent hours crying just seeing myself in the mirror, which now sort of breaks my heart for that little girl because she was like what, 12, 14, and it just makes me so sad. But uh from that it was a very long journey. And then sort of as I started working on that throughout the past few years, I realized that it really wasn't the physical thing, but it was a lot of the mental thing. Because I wasn't happy about the person I was. I was very confused. I didn't really know who I was because I was always trying to be someone else. I was always thinking like, oh, I have to be funnier. I have to be more cool. I have to be smarter. I have to be this and I have to be this. But not because I wanted to, but because I wanted other people to think that about me. And so, based on so many different people, I was trying to adjust myself, and obviously, it never worked, and it was just ruining, um, my self esteem even more. And because I wasn't secure in who I was, and I wasn't comfortable in my own mind, which is all coming back to it. What I remember did a lot to me was the difference between getting a criticism or getting a compliment. And to be honest, and you know that, I still struggle with it to this day. I'm talking about it like, oh yeah, it was in the past and like I fixed all of that. I didn't. It's still within me. And coming back to the last episode, that little girl is still within me. And no matter how much I'm trying to heal her, it's not something you can do in few years. It's a lifelong journey and you have to take small steps. So I still do struggle with my confidence. I still do struggle with believing in myself and my abilities and so on and so on. And one thing that I kind of still struggle with is receiving compliments and receiving criticism because for some reason it just it doesn't have the same weight. It's just two very different things. I can receive 20 beautiful compliments, and obviously, it's great. You love to hear it, but all these 20 things will never have the same weight as one criticism. You can have people telling you, oh, you're smart, you're beautiful, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And then you have one person telling you, I don't like the way you look. I don't like your hair, or you are not that smart, or this thing that you are doing is stupid. And it totally overshadows all of these compliments. And I think that the more confident you are and the more self aware you are, less impact these things have on you. Even compliments, even criticism. But as I'm saying, it's still something that I have to work on. So please do not criticize me. I won't bear it.
What you're experiencing there is certainly not unique. You're not alone there. I think so many
No,
people suffer that. You know, you could have as many compliments as you like, but one scathing bit of criticism is going to eradicate all the compliments that you've had before, that have gone before, and you will obsess about that one piece of criticism.
absolutely. Can I tell this story? And you will absolutely hate me for saying it, but I just have to. And at this point, it's just a funny story. When you were criticizing my book, my writing,
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
I had to. Oh my gosh! Because another point is that I'm not sure if it's for everyone, because I know that so many people can take criticism from strangers, for example, on social media, in really bad way, which is not really my case. What my case is that it really depends on the person. Because if a stranger tells me that I'm ugly and stupid, I'm like, who are you to tell me that? They're like, you are ugly and stupid. Shut up. It doesn't really affect me, but obviously when a close person criticizes you is more hurtful. Just it's bigger. And I need to tell this story. I'm sorry because it fits here so perfectly. When I started writing my book and I wrote the first draft, and all these insecurities and everything, it doesn't really only go with your looks or your mind, but it also go, at least for me, with my abilities. So, I mean, I've been writing since I was like 11, but I never really showed it to anybody. No one ever read my writing. And when I wrote my first book in English, and it was, my first proper book that I'm still working on now, I wrote the first draft. I wanted some feedback. And so you were there. I was like, perfect person to give me the feedback. So I sent it to you. And your feedback was quite, I mean, you were right about every single thing you said. I will give you that. And now I see it. But at that moment, when you gave me that feedback, it was so, I mean, it wasn't harsh. It was honest, but in the way that I kind of didn't want to hear it. I kind of wanted you to tell me like, oh yeah, you are doing good. I mean, you can do this better, but you are doing good. And you are not the type of person to are just like, okay, so this is terrible, and like you have to fix this and this and that. And I remember how hard it was for me to actually accept that. And that was like the only time you made me cry. I mean, nowadays it's a funny story that I'm often using against you. But the thing is that, first of all, from close people, it's even worse, because then when I was, sharing my book, or the first chapter of my book, I rewrote it based on your suggestions. And then I was sharing it with a community of people that I sort of built on social media. And when I was getting their feedback and there was something negative about it, I didn't really care. I mean, obviously, when it was constructive, I took it and then I fixed it. But when it was just something harsh that I really didn't take much from, I just didn't care. So it's really important what kind of relationship you have to that person. And also, it's so funny how it can stay with you. Because I know, and I'm sure that you told me throughout all this time when I'm writing and I'm sharing it with you, I'm sure that you told me so many nice things. I don't remember a single one. I know you did, but I can't quote it. I can't tell you what it was. But that one piece of criticism, and you know exactly what sentence I'm talking about, I remember to this day, and I will remember it to the day I die. I'm telling you.
Well, yes, of course, I know what you're talking about, and I, hand on heart, wherever my heart is. I think it's never quite sure about
So
these
where
things.
the rock thing that you call your heart is?
The Rock, yeah. Um, my bad. I handled that badly. I was trying to make a joke out of it, to just to make a point, and it was too sensitive for me to joke about. So that was,
Yeah.
yeah. That was my bad, and I'm sorry. And we've already spoken about that. So thank you for bringing it
Yeah,
up.
but I kind of want to have it out there, But it's perfectly for this topic. It fits. I wasn't about to say that, but it just came to my mind, and I think it fits, and I think it needs to be there.
Yeah, funnily enough, it came to my mind before you said it, and then I thought, well, I'm
Of
not going
course
to
it did.
mention that.
Oh, of course it is. Shared brain cell, shared brain cell.
Yes. But going back to before you spilled the beans on how I made you cry, you were talking about people's self-esteem, your self-esteem, and how you struggled with it when you were younger. And I think that's what we come down to, is that when you're, and let's, full disclosure, we're not actually qualified psychologists here.
No, not
We're
yet.
we're people who try to look after each other. But when you are trying to be a self-confident person, when you're trying to build yourself so that you can rely on what is in your own mind, is you have to probably overcome low self-esteem, and that's the issue, and that's what you were struggling with. And I know that I've had it. I actually have here this, and I'm going to share. I'm not sure how well it'll show up here. Marvelous list. That's not my list.
You did your research. Good for
I
you.
downloaded it. So these are some signs of low self-esteem. And I think if you actually sort of read them out loud, if you acknowledge them, think, oh yeah, that's me and that's me. Once you've done that, that's the first step to actually
Yes.
fixing it in your own mind.
Isn't that a saying that the first step to fix a problem is to acknowledge that problem?
Quite probably. If we were qualified psychologists, we'd probably know that.
No, I know that I've already heard it, and I think it's like a saying, or I'm not sure if I quoted it right, but it's true. That's how it has to start, because you can't fix a problem that you are not really aware of.
Yeah. Well, you've got to be aware of it, and B, you've got to acknowledge it as a problem. Here are some signs of low self-esteem: fear of failure, lack of self-care, not looking after yourself properly. This is something we've spoken about before: negative social comparison,
Oh yeah.
comparing yourself to your peers, people pleasing, trying to please people like a little puppy, lack of boundaries, avoiding challenges, having a negative body image. You were talking about how you struggled with that when you were younger. And another one that actually you just were talking about: sensitivity to criticism, self-doubt, and indecisiveness. And there are others. So these are the
So
things that
basically, what you just did is that you wrote down a list of my negative traits that you noticed over the years, and now you read it out loud, and I feel exposed, and I take it personal. I mean, you are right, and it just shows that I still have a long journey to take to really fix it, because like basically everything you just read, I still struggle with to a certain level, not just as much as I did when I was a teenager, but I still do. So I can confirm that, yeah, it's right.
I think most people at some point in their lives or other have experienced one or more of those symptoms, if you like, of low self-esteem. And I can remember a time for me where I went through a period. Ironically, it was when my career was really flying high at the BBC, but my personal life was sort of non-existent. I would be in the office or the studio from like 9:30 in the morning through till about 8 o'clock at night. And then quite often there would be functions to go to in central London, because I was working in central London. And then I would have to commute home. And quite often during the course of the week, I would be getting the last train home at midnight, and then be on the train again at whatever it was, 8:30 the following morning. And during that time, I became somebody that I didn't really recognize. And because I couldn't sort of marry together the time I was having in terms of my career, my job, which was fantastic, and I was really enjoying it. But at the same time, there was a kind of emptiness in my personal life. And I just had this mantra going through my head the whole time, well, the whole time, but frequently, just saying to myself, this is not me. This is not who I am. And I was sort of adrift because I just didn't know who I was. That was the hardest thing. And that was probably the one time when actually maybe mentally I was not fully at it. But because I was so focused on my work and that gave me everything I needed, really, I could ignore the external noise about my personal life was not what I wanted it to be. And I just couldn't quite identify who I did want to be. And so I just kept saying, this is not me. This is not who I am. But it took a while to get past that and find out actually who I was again. And I think one of the things, the way that you fight this is that you really got to try and know yourself and accept yourself and accept that you are the most important person in your life, not in a selfish way, not in an entitled way, but just in a way that you've actually got to look after yourself because it's quite possible nobody else is going to. And so I learned to like myself, to know myself, accept, I am the main person in my life. I am my own celebrity. So enjoy the celebrity. And that's how I came out of it, I think. And now I really don't have any such problems and haven't for years. I'm quite comfortable in who I am. Maybe quite wrongly, people might argue,
Maybe
but
too comfortable.
I don't think you can ever be too comfortable. There's always questions. But I know you're just taking the mickey out of me
Yeah, no, I had to.
as
Someone
ever.
has to bring your ego and that confidence of yours to a certain level, and sometimes somehow
It's
just
just my
make it
eternal
less.
optimism.
No, of course. And this all that you just said, once again, comes back to the self-awareness and to even be aware of the fact that you are losing yourself or that you are not who you used to be, or maybe you don't like who you are. And here I kind of want to go back to something I already said when I was sort of saying, when I was sort of talking about my experience and the fact that I was trying to change for someone else. And I think that people do that a lot because, we all want to be liked by people around us. And people change for their parents, for their friends, for their partner. Even I think people change for, maybe their boss because they wanted to be liked. And I'm definitely not a fan of that. One thing is to grow around someone and one thing is to change for someone. Because, if I think about it, I changed a lot around you, but not because I wanted you to like me, but because, I just changed and like you gave me new viewpoints that changed me. But I definitely didn't change myself for you to like me. And I never will. I'm sorry. If you don't like me, you just have to get over that. But my point is that I'm not a fan of changing for someone else, but I'm a huge fan of changing for yourself. Because if you see something on yourself that you don't like, no matter what everyone else is thinking, if I see something on myself, my life, my body, my personality, whatever, if I see something that I don't like, you can change it. You can change everything about yourself. And I don't want to make it seem like it's an easy thing to do. Of course, when you think about it, it's not. I didn't like the fact that I was a shy girl with no confidence. So that's what I changed about myself. Doesn't mean that I was 100% successful. I'm still shy. I still struggle with my confidence, but I'm working on it. And if you pinpoint something about yourself that you don't like, you can change it. This is your permission to change it and to change yourself in a way that you will like yourself. And here I sort of want to bring up this theory of mine, which I'm not quite sure how to explain it so it makes sense, but I call it the Michelle Williams mindset, which is obviously based on my name. But at the same time, it's not really based on my name because Michelle Williams is not really my real name. It's sort of name that I'm using publicly, but obviously it's not the name that I was born with or the name that I have on my ID. But it's a name that I created for myself years ago when I was like 11, 12. And I didn't think much of it. It was just because I was on social media. I didn't want to use my name. And I also wanted to use an English version of my name, but it's been like 10 years now. And as you can see, I'm still using that name. And what I realized quite recently, when I was in America actually, was that I created this whole persona called Michelle Williams. And I don't really know how it started, but maybe because I wasn't happy with myself. And at the same time, I wasn't really in touch with that, if I call it public persona that I was using. I could be whoever I wanted to be on social media under the name Michelle Williams. And I create this whole persona for that person because Michelle Williams was confident and, she could speak English and she could do all these things. She could write a book. She could start a podcast. She could do all these things, but she could do that, not me. But at the same time, it was me because it was a persona that I sort of created, and obviously it was me the whole time. But the confidence level was different there because it wasn't me, it was someone else. And obviously it's easier to support someone else and to be nice to someone else. And as I'm saying, I created this name when I was like 11. So it's been years. And only after I moved to America, I realized that because in America, everyone was calling me Michelle. I was introducing myself as Michelle because it was easier because my name isn't really perfect name to pronounce for English speaking people. You struggle with it sometimes. So suddenly everyone was calling me Michelle. And it was also connected with the fact that I moved abroad and I was finally on my own in a new environment and I could sort of build myself from scratch, basically. But I realized that over these 10 years, I slowly became Michelle Williams. Because when it started, it was her and she was confident and she was doing all these things. And now I am Michelle Williams and I'm so in touch with that name and that persona that my original name, my Czech name, when I hear it somewhere or when I see it written, it feels like it's a name of a stranger. And so I feel like basically she doesn't exist anymore. And who I truly am is Michelle R. Williams. And even though it might sound a bit crazy now that I said that out loud, so please don't judge me. But my point was that it's much easier to build that ideal person you want to become and then make the steps to become that person. And it's easier than looking at yourself and being like, okay, I don't like the fact that I look like this. I don't like the fact that I'm shy. I don't like the fact that I can't do this because that's negative talk. But if you build this ideal version of you, you don't have to name it differently. You can just see it as me in 5 years. And when you build that person, that future person, it's much easier to see the steps and to become that person. So that's sort of what I've done and how I changed from that very shy, very insecure little girl who never wanted to leave Czech Republic, who never wanted to put herself out there, who definitely wasn't someone who would start a podcast, to someone who's sitting there talking about all of this and having a podcast. So it worked for me, and I kind of wanted to share that story here because maybe it's this type of mindset that can help someone else.
So true. And actually, that's a very good topic that maybe we could take further in another episode, because I certainly have a similar-ish story to that. But
Oh, I know.
it's a good
Yours is funny.
but it's not for this episode. But it's a good technique, and I think the takeaway for this episode is that you need to find the mechanism so that you can be comfortable with your own mind, because it's yours alone, and you're the only person who's going to have to deal with it. So the important thing is to respect your mind and keep developing it. And most important of all, keep it open.
Yes, because it is all in your mind.
It is. So if any of this has resonated with you, please let us know.
You can leave us a comment on Spotify or YouTube, or you can write us a message on Instagram at livehappens.podcast.